Today we're going to talk about managing multiple grades in the homeschool classroom. Hey, I'm Amanda Beal, and I'm a former homeschool mom. My kids all graduated and have college degrees and are fairly functioning adults, and I get questions a lot about homeschooling, especially this year. And one of the questions I've been asked a lot is about managing multiple grades. I know a lot of you guys have been thrown into it this year, and just it's all new to you, and it's becoming a lot, as this first month or so gets going, and it's like, how do I keep everything together when I have multiple grades in one homeschool classroom? So I actually homeschooled my 3 children at once, and they were all distinctly different grades. My oldest son, Brian, was 2 years older than my younger son, Ricky, but Brian is really academically advanced. So even though they were semi-close in age, we couldn't teach them together. And then the difference between Ricky and Brianna was 4 years, and they were so disparate in age, I couldn't really do things together with them. So essentially I was doing things separate for the certain classes that they had. But in addition to homeschooling my own children, I also taught in a private Christian school, and I taught a multi-grade classroom. In 1 year, I had students in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. So I have experience with lots of children in lots of different grades and managing a classroom situation. So I definitely have some tips that I hope that can help you. And so here we go. This is what I have for you. So first of all, I definitely think, and it almost goes without saying, that you have to have some discipline and organization in your classroom. And that's pretty basic. I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, I know that. But when you are homeschooling your children, and I say this having been a school teacher and then having my own children in the home, it's different. Because in my Christian school classroom, discipline ruled the day. But then when we go home and it's our own children, it's usually a little bit more free than what you would have if you were doing it professionally. So when you are homeschooling, though, you really have to buckle down and make sure everybody understands this is school time and this is the time we need to focus, and you will obey and you will follow directions, and we are going to be on task and not allow them to get distracted. You have to really take it seriously. Your home has now become the classroom. It's almost transported to a completely different state of being, and you have to treat it that way. So even though you might have a very free and easy and relaxed home, and that's what you want it to be, that's awesome, and I totally support that. But when it comes to classroom time, you've really got to buckle down and make sure everyone is on task and paying attention. Otherwise, your day will drag on, and it's going to be a problem for everyone. So it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that everyone understands that there is going to be some discipline, some structure, and then we are going to be organized. A schedule, every classroom has a schedule. You don't have to stick to it to the minute as a homeschooler, but certainly having a general idea of what your schedule is and having some consistency will help both you and your children to be able to function during the homeschool day. So right off the bat, I just think it's important to mention you've got to have some discipline and organization just to start out with. But beyond that, I think we also need to acknowledge that there are classes that you really aren't going to be able to do as a group. A lot of homeschoolers I know talk about doing these classes as a group, but to be honest with you, just my own experience and what I've seen from others, there's just the 2 main classes that you really have to handle on an individual basis, and that's English and math. And you might be able to do them in a small group if you have kids who are maybe close in age or at the same level academically, but you're still going to be handling them mostly individually or small group, so you need to make sure you make time for those. And when you're building your schedule, I recommend that you actually figure out what classes you need to do individually or in a small group, and build your schedule around how you're going to do those classes. They're going to be the backbone of your structure, the things that you're going to spend the most time with, and the things that you need to actually be focused on during your homeschool day. So when it comes to English and math, I would sit down and figure out who is going to need individualized attention and make sure they have their own specific time slot, and who needs attention in small groups, and put that on your schedule. And hopefully you can fill in the blanks with the group classes and other activities elsewhere. Another thing you're going to need to make sure you do is plan to occupy your students who aren't getting individualized attention when you are with someone very specifically. Don't just say, you guys find something to do, me and so are going to be working on math. No, don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to your student that needs individualized attention. Have a plan. Make sure you know exactly what everyone is doing. I totally recommend for your older students, and this is, I think, works really well, to have your older students either go very first during the day, like when your younger students are maybe having their breakfast, or during nap times if you have really young children. But if you don't have any nap times, then get your older kids up early and have them do those individual classes, the difficult classes, right at the beginning of the day. Knock those out and make sure that they are taken care of. So then they have a plan, and your older students should better be able to work on their own and be self-paced, and they can be focused while you are working individually with your younger children. So that's definitely a recommendation that I have, of making sure you're scheduling your day as such that your older children are done first, probably while your younger children are still kind of getting up, getting breakfast, getting out of bed. And then the whole rest of your day is going to run smoothly. Also, on the note of older kids, once they are done with their main work, they should be able to help you out with your younger students, particularly in the areas of handwriting or spelling practice. That's definitely an area that they can jump in and just take a peek and try to help their younger siblings. Younger siblings really love working with their older siblings. And older siblings usually like to feel like they're helping out. So giving everyone a task and allowing them to work together is not imposing too much on your older children. It's actually helping everyone and encouraging your family as a unit. So don't feel like you can't use your older children and it's not something that's for them. Definitely feel like you should be able to help and include your younger children by having your older children be a part of their education experience. So then you want to determine what aspects of their classes actually needs to be done with individual attention and what aspects can be done kind of on their own. So like when you have math work, certain things can be done at the board. Like we have a whiteboard that we use. That's how we do our actual teaching time, is I'll be at the board and then they come to the board and we work through some problems, and that's how we would do it. And then they would have math practice, which they would do on their own. So even though I'm scheduling math time on my schedule, that doesn't mean the entire block of math time has to be devoted to individualized attention. You might only have 15 minutes of teaching time, or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then the other 15, 20, 30 minutes is devoted to practice. But you need to have an idea. Don't just think that you've got to spend that whole math time looking over their shoulder. That's why they're going to do the work on their own, and then you're going to spend some time grading it, making sure they understand the material, and then if not, assigning them additional work. So make sure you divide up each individual class by what part needs your attention and what part they can do on their own. That way you're not spending your time sitting around waiting for someone to do work when your time is really valuable when it comes to teaching multiple grades. Now, there are some classes that you can do in a group, and usually it's every class but English and math. You have your science, you have your social studies, PE, art, music, Bible. That's another great one. So all of those classes you can definitely do as a group. And there are lots of great materials out there that are made to be done in the group setting. One of my favorite books is the Apology of Science series. I'll link it down in the description box. It's not an affiliate link, it's just where you can find it and what books they have available. But we used it in our homeschool and it was one of my favorites. I'll tell you right off the bat, their astronomy was the best. But anyway, so their non-high school books are actually made with the multi-grade classroom in mind. So when we were doing our astronomy work, I think it's actually based for middle schoolers, but they actually have assignments that tell you how you can change it to work for elementary school students and also how you can make it more challenging for high school students. So it's really helpful when you are teaching a multi-grade classroom to make sure everybody in the classroom is kind of studying the same thing. For instance, that year for science, everybody's doing astronomy, which if everyone is doing astronomy, then you can do certain activities together, like visit the planetarium or get some books or movies, and everybody can enjoy it and understand it at their level. But at the same time, when it comes to learning, you can do that in small groups, or even do it as a group activity, but just have additional time with your older students, or set up separate activities for your younger students. But either way, it's ready for your multi-grade classroom. So I really recommend Apologia, but there are others out there, and you should definitely look for those. On that same note, when it comes to social studies or history, I also like to have everyone in my classroom studying kind of the same thing. So we divide up history into Old World History, Part 1, and Part 2, or New World History. and then U.S. history, and then we usually have a geography and or American government class. I usually try to schedule the American government or civics on the same year that there's a presidential election, because there's usually so many great supplementary materials that are out there and different activities that you can do that relate to American government. So this would have been a really great year to do that. But either way, I'm usually trying to make sure that everyone in my classroom is learning the same time period at the same time. You know, if one child is working on pyramids, it's easier if their brother or sister is also studying pyramids, and that way if they have a question and I'm busy, they can ask their older sibling and they're studying it at the same time and they can answer any questions that they might have. So it helps when everybody is kind of studying the same thing. That's the same for like Bible or art or music, any of those other subjects. If we are all studying it, it's very easy for everyone to work together. When it comes to Bible, we would have daily devotions and everybody's reading their Bible together. And I would usually have Bible memory verse for everyone, and we would do it together, kind of like the Pledge of Allegiance. That's how I did it. So every day we would practice a portion of Bible that we were trying to memorize. For instance, we would do like James chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. And every day we would say it all together, kind of like the Pledge of Allegiance. And then after a period of time, everybody knew it. So I didn't have to find a different verse for the younger children, a different verse for the older children. We all did it together. We all had a discussion about it together. Even if the younger children didn't participate as much or didn't understand deeper thoughts, they were still there, just like being in church. You know, there's a lot of things that might go over their head, but there's things they might pick up, and you never know. So Bible we did together and did Bible memory together and did Bible songs together, had no problem with that. Art, a lot of the art classes you could do together. There's some activities that might be a little more challenging for younger students, but you want to encourage them just to try, and you might be surprised. There are some young students that actually do really well and exceed your older students. Everyone has their skills, and that's okay. Music, I always recommend that people have music lessons for their children. Make sure that they all learn an instrument. But that doesn't mean that you can't every day have some music in your classroom where you're actually playing it or everyone's singing it, or a little music reading practice that you can all do together. And then of course PE is always best in group classes. We always did PE with our homeschool group, and then you as a family can do PE activities that go along with whatever your homeschool group is doing, or your own lessons. Like for instance, everyone can do bike riding, everyone can do kayaking, everyone can do running or walking or swimming. I mean, there's lots of different activities that are individual sports that you can do as a family and everyone can learn about together. So don't feel that you have to do everything as an individual and divide up your day and constantly go from one student to another. Group classes do work for the homeschool, you just have to make it work. Another class we did as a group was literature. I always read to my students every single day, and I read one book and I would read it to all of them. However, sometimes when they got to high school, we would do a separate one just because they needed more in-depth reading practice and comprehension. So maybe I'd read 2 chapters a day, and that never hurt anybody. But usually that was scheduled in such a way that other people were doing their practice work, and then we would be doing reading with the older students. And everybody looked forward to the reading during the day. And frankly, even if the younger students heard the older students reading, you'd be surprised what they pick up on. So, but anyway, those things can be done in small groups, and it works out really well. So those are just some tips that I have to help you if you're trying to manage a multi-grade classroom. Definitely have some discipline and organization. Make sure everyone understands the rules of your homeschool, and make sure you have a schedule. Also, make sure you understand that there are some things that need to be done individualized, and build those as the backbone of your schedule. Then even divide those classes up by what needs to be done alone with you and what can be done alone without you. And then finally, understand with the group classes that there are a lot of things you can do as a group, and embrace those. The goal is to really cut down as much as possible the time that you're spending with everyone individually, because you as a family can learn together and it can be a blessing for everyone. So anyway, that's it. If you have any other suggestions for managing a multi-grade classroom, go ahead and put those down in the comments, because I'm sure people would appreciate hearing your suggestions as well and what's worked for you. And let me know if you have any questions that I can answer for you. That would be helpful. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.